Well, joining me today to look through all those are Nigel Nelson, the political editor of the Sunday Mirror, and Melanie Phillips, the columnist for The Times. Welcome to you both. Let's talk a little bit about America and what the commentators are saying there. Melanie, it has become conventional wisdom, really, that the present situation of demonstrations potentially turning violent is benefiting Donald Trump. But do you think that conventional wisdom is right?
Well, 5 minutes ago, the conventional wisdom was that Joe Biden had it all sewn up because COVID was going to win him the presidential election. How quickly things change. It seemed to me for some weeks that Democrats had walked straight into a trap. They had uncritically supported Black Lives Matter. They could see that the movement Black Lives Matter had energized thousands of their Democrats' natural supporters. And then they were faced with this situation they chose to ignore for the best part of 3 months. The almost nightly scenes of carnage in certain American cities. And when it became too much, they were then trapped. They went through their whole Democratic convention without even mentioning what millions of Americans were seeing horrified on their streets or on TV or on social media. Not one mention, let alone any condemnation. Too late, they woke up. Mr. Biden suddenly realized that he had to say something, and so he's been saying a few things. But basically, people have got the message, and the Democrats are extremely worried that they've got the message that the Democrats basically support Black Lives Matter, and Black Lives Matter will be trashing their cities and intimidating diners in grotesque scenes in which they are, diners in restaurants are being faced with mobs charging into the restaurant and demanding that they support Black Lives Matter or else. And people can't believe that the Democrats have just supported all.
OK,
so
well, what do you think, Nigel? Because Joe Biden may not be talking about the unrest, but Donald Trump certainly hasn't been talking about the black people who've been shot by the police either, has he? Or killed in the case of...
No, that's right. And what Joe Biden was hoping for was a one-issue election, which was Donald Trump's disastrous handling of COVID-19. And now we've got at least two issues on the agenda, which is the rioting that's going on through America. I mean, I think that Joe Biden's absolutely right that have a divisive president in the White House does fuel political violence. But he's going to have to go an awful lot further than that. It's not good enough to actually blame President Trump without having a strategy of his own. I mean, if you remember someone like Tony Blair, his third way slogan was tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. That was a very clever piece of political positioning. And what Biden needs now is something similar.
Now, we'll see what Joe Biden says when he goes to Kenosha later on today. What about this getting back to the office, getting universities going, which is certainly concerning the government, but also concerning the columnists? I look forward to seeing you both in the flesh at some point in the future. But Melanie, do you think really, when everyone's still having to take precautions of one kind or another and being advised to, it makes sense to urge people to get back to work as well?
Well, I mean, the government has been in the same trap from the very beginning, and one has great sympathy. On the one hand, the terrible damage to the economy that we've seen taking place. On the other hand, the terrible damage to people's health and lives. And it's been a terrible attempt to balance the two, which is still going on. So now, of course, the government in Britain, just like other governments, is desperately concerned that with the onset of autumn, life should go back to normal. Schools and universities should go back to normal. Lawyers, employees should go back to work. The problem is that the public doesn't buy it, not least because of the sort of mixed messages coming out of the government. That on one hand, they're saying everything is fine, everything is safe. On the other hand, you can see it's not, because people still don't know so much about this disease, about how the virus is working. They don't understand why more people are getting infected, but apparently fewer people are being made seriously ill. Is that because the virus is changing, it's less lethal? Is it perhaps because so many people out there now in the streets and in the pubs and the restaurants and so on are young and therefore not so susceptible to the disease, which means that people like me, my generation, who are still shielding because we feel very vulnerable, we're not going out. So if we were to go out again and behave as normal, would we then become susceptible to the disease? fact is, no one knows the answer to these questions. It's not surprising that people are very reluctant to go back to normal.
What about universities, Nigel? Do you think they could become the so-called care homes of the second wave?
No, I don't. I mean, for a start, that students aren't being discharged from hospital with COVID back into universities. And David Plunkett's absolutely right that universities ought to go back in the same way that schools have gone back. Where I take issue with him and with Alan Sugar is the idea that everything is going to have to go back to the way it was, that the country's changed, we've changed. This is a fantastic opportunity to look at different ways of running our economy. And we should start considering some radical ideas, like whether a shorter working week would mean better productivity, whether or not the benefit system could be reformed with, say, a universal basic income. I'm not saying any of those things should happen, but we should be looking at it. Scotland certainly is, and so is New Zealand.
OK, thank you both very much indeed. Very nice to see you, albeit remotely.